Okay, so welcome back from the break, everyone. We are now on page 20 of the application guide. This is criteria number 4, design input. Okay, so we know that you're probably going to have a few questions about this criterion, but if you can, please try to hold on to your questions until the end as we may get to them. So first we will go through page 20 and then Cedric will provide some guidance on this unique time. We'll also just talk a little bit more about holding meetings during COVID-19. So as you see here on this page, this criterion has a 4-column chart to fill out. So first, you are going to identify their first column identifies goodness gracious. The first column addresses the engagement method, and it has 2 parts. So first, you are going to identify the methods of engagement, which can include surveys, virtual in-person meetings, and so forth. You'll also need to include location, dates, and addresses for the engagement that occurred. And these locations can occur throughout the region to engage populations within the surrounding communities, whether that's 20 miles away or it's countywide. The second column here is where you describe your broad representation and your numbers of participants that were included in your design process. So again, you want to make sure that you are gathering information from interested potential visitors, including youth, older adults, and working adults. This third column asks about how participants provided ideas for the project. And then the fourth column is about your approved design ideas. So you do not include ideas that are not going to be part of the project. So down here, looking at this scoring rubric, so if you have at least 2 engagement methods to ask for public design ideas, then you will receive 5 points for this kind of first part. I do want to make a note here that in this scoring rubric, this first top part, down here in this last line, it does say surveys between June 5th of 2018 and the date of appropriation. That should say the date of application. So go ahead and cross off appropriation and write application in. For your second part of the scoring rubric, your combined engagement methods, including that broad representation, will give you 5 points. And then that your response describes how participants were encouraged to provide design ideas, as well as listing those specific ideas, will also get you 5 points for a total of 15 points here for design input. Okay, so let's go over to page 57, which is where we have the technical assistance for this criteria. Thanks, Sam. So again, the intent of this criteria is to allow participants to interactively exchange ideas regarding what nearby communities need. So these meetings can provide an opportunity for residents to not only select features within the project, but also identify detailed designs, beautification ideas such as public art or landscaping, themes such as a pirate ship for a playground or other cultural and historical connections from the region, and also safe public use ideas such as fencing, lighting, or location of features in the park. Okay, so now we're going to go to our technical assistance documents for a link to guidance on community-based planning during COVID-19. So here's the COVID-19 documents, and again, it's available on our website. So this document is going to give you direction for meeting with residents while following COVID-19 health guidelines in order to achieve that exchange of ideas through social distancing methods. This document provides different platforms and ideas as well as tools that may be helpful. So again, use the chat feature if you have any questions, and Cedric is going to share a few thoughts about community-based planning. Cedric?
Thank you, Noelle. Community-based planning, we have found over the last 2 decades has been really an extraordinary opportunity to connect with people and produce some outstanding projects. And certainly after in March of last year, as and through the year, as we have had our programs, people have had concerns about their ability to have in-person meetings concerning projects. After much thought and many discussions, we came to the conclusion that there's certainly other ways other than in-person meetings to make those connections. And granted, it's more difficult to do this. However, when you combine all of the Prop 68 program dollars that we're going to be giving out, nearly $500 million is going to be going into communities during this time. And it's critically important that their views, their ideas, their spirit be encapsulated within them. So one of the options that we've done, and certainly looking at this document that we produced, community-based planning meetings during COVID-19, it gives you some ideas on how you can utilize technology and how you might utilize community resources to make connections to people, and those connections can be virtual. So looking at multiple resources, surveying, as well as should the COVID-19 restrictions be lifted, doing meetings that are within the guidelines, the health guidelines and safety standards that are going to be set, is something to consider doing. During this incredible, horrible time that we've experienced with COVID-19, the communities that we're trying to serve have been the most impacted. And it's been during a time in which, more than ever before, communities need us to make those connections. Keeping in mind that these programs, these projects that are going to be coming out of this are going to be representative of a post-COVID era and that will live in communities for the next 30 years. Some of the ideas included working with schools because we know to a degree still there is a digital divide in many of these communities, but over the last 10 months, school districts and governments have deployed technology in a way that it had never done before, giving people access that didn't have it before. And certainly, while everyone doesn't have that access, we want to take advantage of those connections. In the past, we've suggested that schools be utilized in classrooms where you meeting with a teacher or someone who has an interest in wanting to avail your project to their students or families, that you could utilize that. We recognize that during COVID-19, while there is a lot of virtual instruction going on, that the challenges of getting in with teachers can be difficult as they're trying to meet the standards for their teaching experiences and teaching demands also. But with it being difficult, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it. And what we're finding is that during this time, especially during this, as people are applying for the statewide park program and other programs, that they're using the creativity and connecting with community in ways that they maybe hadn't thought of doing before. I know with some of our own programs, what we've done is worked directly with nonprofit organizations and those public entities who maybe are not directly providing recreational services, but are providing services to the community as they recover and go through this COVID-19 time. But the key is that they had access. We have access to communities that otherwise might be shut out. These programs are geared towards the most underserved, and during this time, it's going to be critical for us to figure out how we're going to make those connections. So whether those connections are virtual or whether they are through survey or any number of other avenues that you might be able to produce, we're going to look at them equally as if you were having meetings in person. The goal here is not to penalize, but instead to make certain that the spirit of communities are going to be within the projects that are going to be developed. We do have a document on our website, community-based planning and design. It looks at over 20 years of trial and error and telling the story of community-based planning within California, and it goes to show the challenges, but it also sets up some goals that you should be able to get not only during the pre-COVID times, but post-COVID and during COVID. You should be able to reach the goals that are set by that kind of outreach effort. And you can do that virtually or through other means. I'm going to stop here and invite Victor to look into the chat to see if there are any comments or questions that we might be able to address more broadly at this time. Victor?
Thank you, Cedric. There is a nice question from Jackie, and that question is a pretty common question. Can a public board meeting be counted as a public engagement event? And the answer is it can in theory. How that's applied in practice will make or break the points you receive. If you go back to criteria number 4 on page 20, pay close attention to not just the prompting questions, but also the scoring rubric. And if you are going to use a board meeting to engage as a form of engaging the general public, what we would want to know and confirm is how were a broad representation of residents. And again, I'm on page 20, Sam. If you go back to page 20, please. So if you look at the questions here, it's sometimes board meetings can do this. Sometimes they're more about just the board coming together to approve the project that was designed by a consultant, for example. And what we're really looking at is if you're using a board meeting, how were the participants? Did it involve youth, seniors, working adults? How were they actually encouraged to provide their design ideas? And then finally, you'll list the approved design ideas that came from the general public. So we're encouraging an approach that goes beyond one person or a few people designing a project and then presenting that project to the board, but really to get a little more detailed ideas from the general public, especially different age groups like youth, seniors, and working adults, to really help get that creative exchange of ideas going to help really enhance the project. So the document that Cedric mentioned, and also the examples from the past 10 years or so of community engagement can give you some great ideas of what this means to go through a more detailed design process. But yes, in theory, for this program, in theory, a board meeting could work if you feel that that a good group of youth, seniors, and working adults will be engaged, and that they're clearly going to be encouraged to provide their design ideas to help shape the project. Okay.
Victor, I want to add to that.
Sure.
Keep in mind that if you've had meetings already that offered in-depth discussion about a project that you have in mind, meetings that took place between June 5th of 2018 and the application due date are eligible. So you can have and count meetings that you did in 2018 or 2019 if they were specific to the project that you're proposing. Are there any other questions?
That's it, Cedric. Yeah, thank you.
All right. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to turn it over to Christine at this time. Christine?